right away, locusts are linked to curses, not blessings. So now John the Baptist comes and he's eating locusts and wild honey. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This is Yalak. Once again, it is February 24, 2018. This is another lesson in the New Testament is Fake series. What I'm trying to accomplish in this lesson is to bring across information that lets you have an alternative thought about the sacrificing of animals and the eating of animals and animal byproducts, I guess, as I'll be talking about milk and locusts in this video. And then you can just chalk that up to being other parts that you get from animals, like even eggs. And that's going to let you have another way of approaching the sacrifices in the Old Testament on the holy days or high holy days, like sacrificing animals and eating them, as I have been showing so far that the animal sacrifices of ancient Israel were like the animal sacrifices of other nations, and those other nations were doing them before there was ever a nation of Israel called out of Egypt. So those sacrifices are not unique to Israel. So you can just think that, as they would be called in later times, pagan nations or heathen nations were doing these same sacrifices. It's just that when these different practices are ported into the life of Israel, they are given small differences to make it seem like it is right if Israel does it this way, but it's the same thing. So there is no set-apartness, true set-apartness with Israel. It's just a hinted set-apartness, a deceptive set-apartness to make you feel like if you chop the animal this way, or if you slice it this way, or if you turn it upside down and drain the blood this way or whatever, or cut it real fast and so on, that you are doing something set apart to the animal. But however the heathen nations around Israel are doing it, they are not set apart, even though they're still killing the animals. They arrive at a dead animal and Israel arrives at a dead animal, but because Israel killed the animal in a slightly different way, then they are set apart and the other nations are not. Well, if you think you're set apart after you just ended up with a dead animal the same way the heathen nations ended up with a dead animal, is your dead animal set apart in its state of death than the dead animal that is now in a state of death from the other nations who don't know the Most High? Both animals on both sides of the fence are in the same state. They are both dead. This lesson is titled John the Baptist. This is another lesson in the New Testament is Fake series. The New Testament is Fake series is revealing more how I'm approaching the scriptures, as initially I did not begin the series like this, but eventually I found it necessary to rethink the Bible or rethink the Torah. And I started to realize by rereading the scriptures from Genesis chapter 1 that there is something fishy about the Bible as we call it today, or the Torah, meaning the Old Testament. So I started to read from just the cover of the Bible, and then I realized even when you're looking at copyright information and all the prefaces that are out there and so on in these different Bibles, I started to realize that certain countries have certain Bible versions that are just made for them and approved for them. So something seemed a little bit strange. I wanted to find out who wrote this book that we call the Bible. So I'm going to be getting into some more of that in later videos, not necessarily in this series. But what I found along the way is that I just gravitated to rereading from Genesis chapter 1. And so I am sounding a little bit different than the first lesson in this series, the New Testament is Fake series, because initially I just wanted to show that there was something wrong with this Jesus and his sacrifice at Calvary, and that he doesn't give salvation. Like the Most High says, he is the only Savior, so where does this Jesus or so-called Son of God come from? But along the way, it became necessary for me to relearn the scriptures from the ground up. Of course, I still listen to other camps. I still listen to the Christian churches, the preachers and so on. I read a lot of people from websites and books. And so, but still from the ground up means that I'm rethinking the scriptures on my own. So if an idea comes to me that someone didn't teach me in a book, I'm not going to throw it out just because it's coming from me and the person didn't write it in this book I'm reading. Because I am more important than his or her book. Because I got my own mind and I have to answer to the Creator one day. So I want to think for me as well. So from the ground up is what you're getting from my lessons here. So I usually will make use of, introduce whatever concepts come to mind as I see fit, that I didn't read or learn from other people. But of course, I make use of what other people say as well. Now, with John the Baptist, I have to say here that I don't have the information right now, but with John the Baptist eating the locusts and wild honey, I heard a man doing a teaching on YouTube a few months ago, and I saved I didn't record it, but I made note of the link for the video, and I wouldn't know where to find it now. So whenever I do find it, I'm gonna probably just play a clip of it for you guys to hear what he's saying. And he said John the Baptist eating locusts and wild honey, he wasn't eating, honey the way we think of honey today from bees. He said they wouldn't have, but rather he said the Romans at the time, they switched the honey because the honey that they would have been eating was honey, like more natural honey, like from fruits, not honey from bees, which I'm trying to tie that into eating animal products or animal meat and so on. But he was saying the Romans actually switched to honey from bees because it was cheaper for them to do that, because they didn't want to spend more money on feeding the slaves with the other kind of honey, slaves or the common people. So they switched and started using the honey from bees. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And so I've been looking into it for a while and couldn't find much information. I dug into it some more this morning and found a little bit more of information. So I'm going to present that right here. So right away, you're seeing that I am giving you an alternative to the scriptures. All right. One day I may change this channel name or make up another channel or a website to something like Rethinking the Bible or Rethinking the Torah, because I am teaching that the Torah is embedded within the Torah, meaning the true teachings of the Most High are embedded within the given Torah or the given or public teachings that we've been given about the Most High. The Creator is not going to make a world that's so complex and not give any instruction on it and just leave it to mankind just to figure it out. Yeah, sure, you're going to figure out, but he has his commandments written as well. Even the scripture says the heavens declare the glory of God and the firmament showed his handiwork. So it is telling you that in some kind of way, he has left instructions. Now, if Israel is given instructions, or the people before Israel, the patriarchs and so on, and whoever else you want to name, that means that we're being told that there were some instructions given from the Creator, and those would be correct instructions. And he said, don't change anything, like in Deuteronomy 4:2, don't add anything unto what I command you this day. So the only way then to get people to not have the instructions of the Most High is to keep it away from them or just to change it so that they have it in a corrupt manner. That is what I mean by Torah is embedded within Torah. There's a lot of fluff around the true Torah that's been given to us by deceptive teachers over the eons and by scribes who edited the text or wrote the text to put in some false teachings because they were taken away by the false gods. And later on, other people may have, re-edited and so on and done whatever to it. So right there you say, okay, well, do you have any proof that they changed the text? That's a very, very trick question, because when you listen to people who say the Bible has been tampered with or changed, right away, they're very, 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 and you can multiply add 10 more varies to that, the very expert people on the earth who themselves are usually not Israelites, not connected to the people who were black from ancient times and who suffered in the slave trade according to what we're finding in like Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28. These expert people on earth who make the money from the publishing and sales of the Bible or the Torah, and who are the ones who have the Torah that they say is behind glass cases or in museums or whatever, and who have access to the scrolls when they are found and have the power to keep them for many years until they decide to release it to the public. These people are the learned and trained and expert ones, because they are privy to all the breaking information that's out there first and that's found and excavated and whatever. And these are the people that you're getting this stuff from. Yet they are connected to the nations in a lot of cases that actually took us into slavery. So you understand what I'm saying? How can you not dig in some more, dig in further to find out what was really there? So people misunderstood me initially, and some still do, that, oh, you're just against the Torah. And some of the things I'm saying about the ancient Ethiopians and Israel and Ham and Cush and Shem and whatever, they mistake me saying, oh, I'm like, oh, you're going over to the side of the Kemet now, you're helping the Kemet brothers. Listen, I don't know enough about Kemet to try to defend a Kemet argument. I don't know about that. I just hear people say stuff and whatever, and of course I'm having to look into it a little bit more, but that's going to take me many years of searching to get to some level where I can give some commanding argument on that. I'm not defending Kemet, I'm not defending Egypt, I'm not defending Africa. I'm looking for truth. That's what I'm looking for. And in my search for truth, I found it necessary to, in a way, pull away from the teachings of the Christian church, and in a sense as well pull away from some of the teachings of the Israelite community and some of the teachings of Judaism as well. I've had to pull away from some of those enough, of course not divorcing myself fully from it all, but enough to consider something else. Because if the Torah is embedded within Torah, then I have to find a way to peel away and strip away the fluff, the outer part of the Torah that I think has been added, to get to the real nugget on the inside, to get to the real meat on the inside, or to get to the Torah that is embedded on the inside of the given or public Torah. So this Torah covered up by the public Torah is like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil operating, where you can be given some truth, but there is some deception in how it is presented to you. So the serpent said, did God say? He's not telling the woman right there in that sentence or in that question that the Most High did not say anything, period, and that you're just making that up. He's actually getting her to run back in her mind to what she knows the Creator said from what Adam was told. So he's actually, in a sense, using the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, showing that he came already with the knowledge of how to use good and evil, which is why I maintain that the earth had already fallen before Adam came. This person was skilled, or this serpent was skilled in how to use the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, because this person had it operating already in their life, in their mind, and knew exactly how to do it, so that he could take her down. So when I consider these things, I find it a little bit odd that most, if not all, of the experts on the Torah or on the Bible, if I can use a more modern way because they put in like New Testament in it, most of these experts, or usually all of them, I'm talking the real higher up ones, right? Speak, um, they speak authoritatively on the scriptures, and they have a heavy, like excessive knowledge of ancient Middle Eastern life and ancient Torah life and Torah understanding what life was like and so on. They know it. They know the ins and the outs, all the crevices and so on. They're expert with it. And that's how the tree of the knowledge of good and evil operates in an expert manner. That's why the serpent could take down the woman, could lead her and guide her. He's not trying to lie to her necessarily, but he's still going to deceive her by leading her, leading by questioning. So these people know very well what life was like in ancient times, and that's how they can tell you whatever in a way that actually will get you to think something different. So now when you say to these people the Torah has been tampered with, they will tell you prove and show, because they know that nobody out there is going to just so easily be able to show or at all show that on July 26 in 1032 AD that the Torah was changed. And this is the original copy, or this is where the original copy was hidden away, or burnt right here, after they change it to give us this modern copy. Or when you tell them Babylon changes and whatever, they know you can't find that information, because if they do have that information themselves, they're not going to tell you. But nature itself tells you that you should listen to your own mind. That's why Adam never got a book from the Most High. But in his mind, he had to decide that what the Creator was saying to him was the truth. That means truth is from and rooted in your mind, not in the pages of a book that somebody prints and tells you, this is the Torah and the ancient Hebrews wrote this. Now, are we happy for what they wrote? Of course. But truth is in your heart. It is in your mind. That's why the Most High says in about Jeremiah 31:34, I'm going to place my law in their inward parts, inside of their heart. Because nobody's going to be able to change that and tell you some dumbness. Nobody has changed this. How can nobody have changed the teachings when you are living in a world that's telling you that probably, if I remember correctly, that the number one cause of a certain disease, I can't remember if it's cancer or arthritis or whatever, or some kind of death from whatever, like I said, I can't remember properly, is caused by eating meat of animals. Nature itself, when it's working in your mind, is telling you something is wrong. So the instruction in the Bible that's telling you to eat meat, and that Israelites were eating meat before the Lord God, has to be wrong, because it does not agree with the nature and the real life event that shows you that even when you have certain illnesses, doctors tell you stop eating meat and so on. And somebody's going to say, yeah, but you can eat certain fruits and certain other stuff too, and it gets you sick and so on. So you see the counter arguments that they use? That's why I'm not concerned with reaching just everybody in general. I'm just trying to teach. Everybody has expressed their truths. I just want to express mine. Like a flower that blooms, if you want to get close to the flower to see its colors and so on, you draw closer and look. So if I'm blooming something because the Most High is like, bloom my truth or whatever, whoever he's drawing and whoever is drawn to it just comes and finds the Most High a little bit clearer. Like when Moses saw the fire burnt, he moved closer. If you find there is enough truth in this, even if it's not all truth, but you find like 50% of it is truth, draw closer to that 50% and let it help you on your way. The other 50% you just like, you don't really care about that, but then I would have still done my job. Because somehow you were drawn closer to the Creator by the time I took to study these things, to search them out and to share them. And hopefully you will go on to giving off that 50% yourself to other people that you can share with and help in this life. So now, if I talk now about this John the Baptist kind of stuff, let me read here the scripture first from Matthew chapter 3 and verse 4. And the same John had his raiment of camel's hair, and a leathern girdle about his loins, and his meat was locusts and wild honey. And so we always thought from we were children that he was eating like locusts, like grasshopper, and wild honey, meaning honey from bees. And this again is the problem I'm talking about with the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This information I'm going to share with you is out there because I would not have found it. I didn't know it. And the first person I heard it from was that man that was teaching about it, who I can't remember now, but I said when I find it, I'll throw it up for you guys to see the video, to watch it for yourself. But he didn't give much information, so I had to look for it and it was hard to find. But anyway, we were taught in a way that made us think that he was eating the honey from regular bees. Now, I don't remember any time in my life when I was a small child in Jamaica that people who taught the Bible told me that it was honey from bees. They just say locust and wild honey. So you just instinctively think it was bees. Because the information, when you're dealing in the Bible world about honey being taught of in Bible passages from other sources, is not heavily mentioned. So you just instinctively think that's from bees. So nobody had to talk. So you see again how the knowledge of the tree of good and evil works. It doesn't have to tell you explicitly the thing that they want you to think, which is the wrong thing. They just allow you to deceive your own self by running on with your own thoughts because of how you are cultured in life already. So someone can just hint something to you, and knowing that they aren't telling you specifically A, but because you are normally used to seeing and interacting with B, they know if they just mention it, you will just automatically gravitate to B because that's in your environment that you encounter normally. While the truth is really A. But they don't want to lie to you and be responsible completely in that way. So they just tell you the stuff and let you run on with B. That's how the tree of the knowledge of good and evil works. Like the serpent said, did God say? He doesn't open up his mouth and say right away, God said that, but no, I'm telling you this instead. He just kind of leads her on with some questioning, and because he knows her thought is just going to work a certain way. So it says here he ate locusts and wild honey. And if you look at that, you're going to see locusts with grasshoppers and so on, which is kind of strange. Now, let me look at the word locust first quickly, which is more honey I'm talking about, but I'll just mention the locust quickly with a couple of verses here. First time we're finding that in the Torah, Exodus 10:4. Else if thou refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow will I bring the locusts into thy coast. And then Exodus chapter 10 verse 12. Again, you remember it's all about Moses going to Egypt to take out the children of Israel by the commandment of the Most High. So it says here, Exodus 10:12, and the Most High said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, that they may come up upon the land of Egypt and eat every herb of the land, even all that the hail hath left. Now notice in Genesis chapter 2, the Creator had said, eat the herbs, right? But the locusts are going to come and eat up the herbs, so the people don't have much food left. So they can't get the food that the Creator said to eat at all or in abundance. So it's going to cause a problem right there. So now, if you don't have the food that the Creator says, and you have to eat other stuff, and you start eating, for example, meat, and I'm not saying this is exactly how it happened in this case here with this scripture, but I'm just talking about the world in general. Like, if Adam is cursed by the sweat of her brow, you're going to eat bread. So he's not getting the same kind of food the same way he had and so on. And then if catastrophes and storms and earthquakes and floods and whatever happen and warfare and so on, and people have to flee and end up starting life over in a different place that's probably dry and crop doesn't grow properly and trees don't grow properly and so on. And they see an animal running and they're desperate, so they kill the animal and eat it. And then animal eating starts to kick off. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Creator wanted you to eat animals from the start, because Genesis chapter 2 does not tell you that. It says eat the herbs and the fruits and so on, right? These trees will be food for you or meat for you. So again, we see there meat doesn't necessarily mean meat from the body of an animal. But if somebody kills an animal and eats that, you're not doing it because the Creator said go and eat it initially. You're doing it because of people got desperate and they started to do it. And it just became commonplace in our world. Now, so far with those two verses I've read, it's telling you that the first couple mentions of locusts are in a negative way. So it looks like right away locusts are linked to curses, not blessings. So now John the Baptist comes and is eating locusts and wild honey. So the thing that is a curse to people in the scriptures and even a curse to the Israelites as well, John the Baptist himself, who's an Israelite, is eating the thing used to be a curse upon people where food is concerned. And yet he's paving the way for the set apart Son of God. It sounds kind of odd. And this isn't my study on locusts. I'm just mentioning these verses, but I'm really going to talk about honey. So I might look into locusts one day, probably, and come back and see what locusts mean when it says he's eating it. But obviously it seems like it's this grasshopper critter kind of stuff. Exodus 10:13, Moses stretched forth his rod of the land of Egypt, brought the east wind all night and whatever. Locusts came up and so on. Let me skip some of these, but there's a few verses here that talk about the locusts, right, being some kind of a curse to people. It's like judgment. Then Leviticus 11:22, you say, yeah, but Leviticus 11 talks about food laws and you can eat, and the Most High said you can eat locusts. And he said you can eat meat and so on. And Genesis 9, he told Noah to eat meat. I already started to cover that already. And I'll maintain here again, the Most High did not tell anybody to eat meat on earth, period. That is my belief. That is my belief. Because I think so far that the scriptures were tainted with, and there we go again with the whole stuff, you can't prove it. No, I'm not going to be able to prove everything in life, but I refuse to live any longer with other people proving to me things that they fail to satisfy me with mentally. Just because you find it written here means the Most High already complained, like in Jeremiah, I think chapter 8, verse 8, that the scribes had a problem with the book. And I can talk about that some more in another lesson. All right. So obviously, and you got these Torah source editors, JPE and Y or whatever their names are, who are just as mysterious as some of the verses in the scriptures. That's why some people are pulling away from the Bible more and more, even in the Christian church. People are getting sick of the Bible because they can't prove certain things from the Bible, but they know it does not help them in this world internally, spiritually, and physically as well, in making a living or whatever. They know there is a curse that Bible knowledge does not help people with, except the people who teach it and have gotten famous with it and make tons of money with it and control it and so on. The average person is pulling away more and more from the scriptures, from the Bible and from these Abrahamic religions, because something is wrong with the Bible, but they're just your average regular person in society. They don't know how to discuss it, so they never argue with you about it. But people are pulling away. Why? Because something is wrong with the book. Get that in your mind. Something is wrong with the book. And so you're going to prove to me that you can't prove, and people who say the Bible has been tainted can't prove that the scriptures were tainted or tampered with. Yet you get a world full of people who are increasingly more and more pulling away from the scriptures. Why? Because their life or the nature of them is saying that book does not help me. It does not work properly in this world, so I don't need it. I don't want it. That is proof right there that something is wrong with the book. You're waiting for somebody to show you a document that says, hey, here it was. It was different right here, different right there. The people who live on earth are telling you something is wrong with it. They can't gravitate to it, so they're leaving from it. That's the biggest proof. Like Jeremiah 31:34 just mentioned, I'll put it in their heart. Well, when people are gravitating from it and don't want it in their heart, it's because they can't see how this current teaching of the word and Torah fits. Doesn't mean there isn't a lot of other truths in it, because obviously there is a lot of truth in it, but some things are clearly wrong, and in other cases, some things are correct, but they're just taught in the wrong way. So Leviticus 11:22, even these of them ye may eat, the locust after his kind, and the bald locust after his kind, and the beetle after his kind, and the grasshopper after his kind. So you say, okay, there it is. So you get the locusts showing up as being a curse all over, and then your God comes and tells you to eat the locusts. Eat the thing that's used heavily as a curse in the scriptures. Just like the Most High saying he doesn't change, but he tells Adam to eat the stuff that grows out of the ground, and then he comes off the boat with Noah and tells Noah to start eating animals. And many Torah teachers, who are international Torah teachers, teach themselves that a part of the reason for the destruction of the first world is because he tells Noah to start eating animals. And many Torah teachers, who are international Torah teachers, teach themselves that a part of the reason for the destruction of the first world is because of, among many other things, eating animals as well. So the earth became corrupt. And then he's going to take a corrupt thing and make it a righteous thing by telling Noah, I killed all the people before for eating these animals, but now you go ahead and eat the animals as well? No, something is wrong with that. And then you tell me the Most High doesn't change? No. So you see, I don't have to have a document that says, here's when the Bible's changed, because who's going to do that with your holy book? And says, yeah, we changed this and here's a proof right here. So you see, I don't have to have a document that says, here's when the Bible's changed, because who's going to do that with your holy book? And says, yeah, we changed this and here's a proof right here. And we buried the original copy down here and whatever, or we burnt it and so on. Who's going to do that? So it's your mind. It's your mind. Adam uses mind to interface or interact with the Most High. And he never had anything go wrong until Eve came and used her mind to think something wrong about what the serpent was telling her. So his mind was good enough to tell what the truth was. So someone took her down now with a teaching in her mind, not with a teaching from a book. Because the real truth and deception is what's going to attack your mind. So you find that supposedly nice verse, nice commandment in Leviticus 11:22 telling you to eat this stuff, which all that Leviticus chapter 11, most of it is garbage. Telling you to eat all these animals and so on. That's garbage. No creator is going to tell you that. And you see, you can look at the experts of the Bible worldwide, and whenever they decide to change, say, oh no, that's not what that word meant, and so on, and they wrote it. And when the scribes and so on were writing the scriptures from early times, they could decide which word to use and which not, whatever, and they should be changed or whatever. But because you are not one of those people, you cannot decide what fits in and what does not. So someone will always use a book to rule you on earth. Deuteronomy 28:38. Look at how the locusts are used again as a curse, even upon the children of Israel. Thou shalt carry much seed out of the field, and shalt gather but little in, for the locust shall consume it. Again, locusts used as a curse, but John the Baptist comes and he's used eating the thing. That's like as a curse. Why didn't he come eating some corn? Deuteronomy 28:42. All thy trees and fruit of the land shall the locust consume. Again, locust used as a curse. Okay, so 2 Chronicles 6:28. If there be dearth in the land, if there be pestilence, if there be blasting or mildew, locusts or caterpillars, if their enemies besiege them in the cities of their land, whatsoever sore or whatsoever sickness there be. So again, it's telling you, locust is linked with famine, and you have food problems and curses and so on. Excuse me. And then let's run over now to a well-known verse here in Joel chapter 2, verse 25. And I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten, the cankerworm and the caterpillar, and the palmer worm, my great army which I sent among you. So the Most High is sending a curse upon the children of Israel, so that their finances are robbed, their crops are damaged, and so on and so forth. And John the Baptist, paving the way for a new God or a new Savior, comes eating the symbol that represents a curse upon the nation of Israel. Locusts. And when you deal with precepts, you just dismiss that all you want. Something is wrong with your mind. You see, too many people have allegiance to their teacher and not to truth. So because you like your teacher, especially because he's bad in the Hebrew and he's been teaching for 25, 30 years. You just stay, oh, I can't leave him because he was the one that let me find out I'm an Israelite. Well, good luck to you. I hope you find the way. But you loved your pastor in the Christian church for 20 years before that, though, from you were a child, and you eventually had to leave one day, right? Why? Can't you see you're just doing the same thing? Now, if we look at the word devash, which in Hebrew is the word for honey, here's some stuff that I found out now and made some notes. I'll just go through my notes here. That as that man, which I first heard it from, had said, the Romans had used this other kind of honey from bees to feed people. And that got me thinking, right? Now, what I searched and found out from is that when you're searching honey, because when I was searching, I couldn't find it for months. And all of a sudden, this morning, I just started finding all this other information. And all along, and for years, I heard about, 2,000-year-old honey found, or 3,000-year-old honey found, preserved, and can still be eaten or whatever. And when you search on honey, most times you're just going to get that kind of information that links you to honey from bees. But there's other kinds of honey out there. And so what's happening then is that for the people who saying, you're getting away from the Torah, brother, and you're deceiving people. Listen, what I present, if you take the time to think about it, you will understand that instead of getting rid of the Torah, I'm actually showing you another way to approach the Torah that preserves the Torah, or shows that the true teachings, as far as I'm able to decide anyway and find, the true teachings have still been preserved. But once you strip off the peripheral, the outer part of the teachings that was attached to it that's incorrect, you can find a purer approach, have a purer approach to the scriptures. So I'm giving you another way to think of the Torah that still preserves the Torah, instead of you saying, he's just against the Torah. Honey from date nectar or other fruits were used. This kind of nectar honey was made in the ancient Middle East, the way we call it today. The honey, and you can go online now from different websites, and you can find honey being sold. And I haven't seen any locally where I'm at. I don't think I've ever seen honey sold that's not from bees. But honey from ancient times was made from fruits, like from apples, from dates, and other kinds of fruits. So immediately now that lets you think, okay. So there could possibly be some other understanding to what's going on. And keep in mind that what I'm sharing here is just showing you that instead of eating the animals when priests are sacrificing to the Most High and having Israel eat animals, which is just a way to participate in animal worship or flesh worship and flesh sacrifice, because once you do these sacrifices to other gods or to the God of Israel, you would then eat the meat as well, eat the food. And I was saying to you that is a precursor to this flesh sacrifice on Calvary, because animal sacrifice is linked to human flesh sacrifice. So by showing you all of this stuff here, I'm showing you that as far as I've found, the Torah does not allow you to eat the food of these animals, the meat and so on. It doesn't make for that, the way I'm looking at it. And by so doing, it then takes you even farther away from eating the animals or offering the animals in sacrifice, which would be linked to eating a part of its body as well, which then takes you farther away from accepting Calvary. Because the Israelites got into animal worship with all those priests and so on, and they got into human worship, offering their children unto Molech and Chemosh, and offered a son of Judah on Calvary as well, which is another Molech sacrifice that I have taught about. Here's a website you can look at I don't think I'll read from it here, but dvashorganics.com. I'll try to remember some of these links to put on the video. dvashorganics.com. So now look at this. Beekeeping, from Wikipedia, I read this. Beekeeping or apiculture, API. Beekeeping or apiculture is the maintenance of honeybee colonies, commonly in man-made hives. So man started making these hives for the bees to take the honey. And if you read up some more on how it's done, they'll take I think it's a queen bee, they said, with a couple of its guards, and put them into this other man-made hive. And usually the other bees that are there would then slaughter all the guards of the queen bee. Right? And so they would just take the bees away from whatever hive and then get access to the honey that the bee is making for itself, not for you to eat, according to how I've read and studied and so on. And now, once they remove the bees from it, then they can take the honey and they transfer the bees to some other hive to make more honey. Well, eventually going to make money from that anyway. And they get the honey like that. And then you can process it and pasteurize it, whatever they do to it and so on. And people say, yeah, but these things are healthy. Like you can get protein from animal meat and from this and that you get from honey, whatever. Of course. If it's raining outside, you can use some big garbage bin to cover your head. Nasty, dirty garbage bin. Especially if you're living on the street and so on, and you can cover yourself, whatever. But doesn't necessarily mean that's the best thing to do with the nasty garbage bin. And I'm not trying to be derogatory. I just couldn't think of any other way to put it right then. But I'm just trying to show you that just because something has some kind of benefit doesn't necessarily mean that it is the best thing to do. That's why people improve in life all the time. Maybe they had like stone or wood wheels initially when they're making carts and whatever. Today you got rubber tires. It works better, even gives a more comfortable ride. Now, it's funny though that this kind of beekeeping to get honey from bees, and I think I might cover it somewhere here, but I'll mention it here just in case I didn't actually make note of it, was not known in ancient times in the Middle East. Like they didn't do it, basically. So now let me run over to this website here from balashon.com, and I'll have to try to remember to put up the link here as well. This article on the word devash for honey, look at what it says here. While the term honey, or devash in Hebrew, appears 55 times in the Bible, it refers to date or fig honey. You know, dates that you eat or figs. It refers to date or fig honey in all but 2 references. So they're saying most times honey, or the word devash in the Hebrew, is talking about honey coming from fruits that the Creator grew and, of course, told Adam, this is the kind of stuff you should eat. That will be meat for you. So again, you see there, meat doesn't mean animal meat, but the meat would be the part of the fruit, like usually the inner part of the fruit. So they give one such place that it means the bees of animal is like Judges 14, verse 8 and 9. Let me read that. Okay, Judges 14. And he took thereof, talking about Samson, in his hands, and went on eating, and came to his father and mother, and he gave them, and they did eat, but he told not them what he had taken that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. And see, all along I read this, I didn't even know. Even a few weeks ago I made a video and I didn't understand it. But now looking into it, because I was wondering why didn't he tell them? It could be, and I haven't read up on this verse in that kind of way, so I'll just say it could be here. So it could be that he didn't tell them how he got the honey, or where, how, because it wasn't honey from like fruits, but it was from the bees. So that's why he probably didn't tell them, because it wouldn't have been seen as kosher in that time, or as, so he hid that information from them. That's possible, but I don't know. But in any case, it says that he did this. So that's one instance where it's not talking about, one of the two references where it's not talking about honey from food. And 1 Samuel 14:27, when Jonathan dipped his rod in a honeycomb during a battle and his countenance brightened. Now, let me go on to read this article from balashon.com. Sarna has a similar note in his commentary here in Shemot 3 verse 8. Honey in the Bible, which in the Hebrew is devash, is predominantly the thick, sweet syrup. So again, you can think of honey as like being a syrup, right? And if you look at the Hebrew, it's going to tell you devash, honey, something that's gummy or thick, right? So you see how the trick can come along over the ages to make you think that it's just this only one kind of honey. Well, no. But honey is predominantly the sweet syrup, thick sweet syrup produced from dates and known to the Arabs as dibs. Apiculture, which is the beekeeping stuff, seems to have been unknown in Palestine. So if it was unknown in Palestine, that means then you can understand that John the Baptist would have known how Israelites were in that part of the world were eating or had a practice of eating honey from fruits. Fruits. Israelites wouldn't have normally been eating honey from bees, because they're telling you here from the research they did, it seems to have been unknown, and I must make mention that it says seems, but it seems to have been unknown. And I got a double up video to show that I mentioned already I'm going to do, to show you the doubling up of information like the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because as soon as somebody puts out something like, then somebody else comes with another research and says, oh, we found that honey was eaten there in those times. And here's the proof. It's a double. That's why you rely on your mind, because God speaks to you in your mind, not from out of the pages of a book. That's how it initially was. Even when you read the Bible right now, God is supposed to speak to you in your mind. So apiculture or beekeeping seems to have been unknown in Palestine. That means in Israel back in the day, they did not know this, according to what this person is reporting. They did not know it. So all those verses of the 55 times when you see devash or honey mentioned in the scriptures, except for those 2 times, it's talking about honey from fruits. That means Israel, ancient Israel in Torah times, knew of and ate honey from fruits, not from bees, which is like from animals. In other words, then, they were not eating of animals and so on in that case, in those cases, which again helps to strike at the whole business of eating animals. If you think of bees being in the animal kingdom, or of beasts, which again is telling you that there is another way to approach this whole animal eating commandments in Leviticus 11 and so on, that the Most High is telling Israelite priests to offer up animals and so on. That either happened because Israelites went astray or someone was messing with the text, but it's clear that they went astray. A lot of times the scriptures told you that. He kicked them out of the land because they weren't doing his commandments. So it's not a stretch for me to say that the nation of Israel was eating animals and doing these sacrifices because they went astray. It's easy to assume that. It's very clear, actually. So it was eating bees, honey, was unknown in ancient Israel. Or the few explicit references in the Bible to bees, honey, pertain to the wild variety, while the date itself is never mentioned. The inclusion of honey among the 7 characteristic products of the land listed in Deuteronomy 8 verse 8 indicates that, like all the others, it too derives from the soil. From the soil as opposed to, like from an animal or from the bees. I happen to take, this is what the writer is saying here, I'm still reading. I happen to take out a book from the local library that discusses this issue in detail. The book is called Fruit Trees in the Bible and Talmudic Literature by Yehuda Felix, Reuben Nass, 1994. The chapter on the Vash is in Hebrew, and I can't quote the entire thing here, but I highly recommend it to anyone interested in the subject. I will summarize a few points he brings up. The phrase here saying land flowing with milk and honey, as the scriptures point out, in the Torah is clearly referring to honey from fruit trees, as it is praising the agricultural bounty of the land. And I've come across so much stuff which helped me to think as well that it was strange that Israel was into all this animal worship and animal eating and so on, and sinking their teeth into animals that they're eating before the Lord. It seems to me, as so many have pointed out, that Israel was like an agricultural nation. So, you see what I'm saying? Dealing with crops a lot. That's why a lot of the curses were like, I'm going to stop up your crop by holding back the rain and so on, and sending locusts to eat up. Because they were agricultural. Even when they're giving their tithes and they come to Jerusalem, they're bringing the crops, and if it's too far to travel with because it might spoil, then they sold it, and then when they came, they would buy it back and give fresh crop, as fresh as it could be, and so on. Agricultural. So where does all this strange animal eating and animal offering to the Most High come? And he's smelling the animal burning as a sweet savor. And I've told you before, I grew up in Jamaica and smelled lots of dead animals burning in tires on the streets sometimes. And sometimes when they're trying to block the road and so on, if ruckus is going on, and you smell that stinking smell of the rubber and the animal being burnt. But God smells it as a sweet savor? And then some smart aleck out there will tell you, yeah, well, the Bible says his ways are not like our ways and his thoughts are not as ours, so it will smell sweet to him. You see how silly they get to pull off any kind of deception? Just to keep your mind away from running to the truth. So it goes on here. However, when it refers to the land flowing with milk and honey, everyone who is left actually in the land shall feed on curds and honey. It is a parody of the Torah verses. For here the prophet is describing a time when the land is desolate, and therefore the bees can proliferate. The milk for the curds will also be widely available because the cows and sheep will be able to graze on the previously tended croplands. So what I'm understanding from that, if I'm getting it correctly, is that he's saying if the land is desolate because of a curse and let's say people have gone off into, let's say, captivity or whatever, but the land is desolate, then the animals are going to flourish some more. And part of the reason is that you're not killing them and sacrificing them to the Most High, and you're not killing them to eat them and so on. So they're going to grow. Like when you watch these end time movies of Earth being destroyed and only a few people left, and you see these old buildings and the highways and roads looking cracked up and so on, and plants and so on growing out of the highways and the streets and so on. Then you see a lot of animals. Why? They're flourishing because people aren't there, so they grow. So I think what he's saying here is that the scripture is saying milk will be in abundance. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a blessing for you to have all that milk, to drink the milk of the animals, because you shouldn't be. That's not what he's talking about. And the honey from the bees. No, it's just saying that because the bees are left alone because the land is not desolate, and the milk is in abundance because of the cows, so a lot of curd from it. It's trying to say that a curse has removed the people, and so the animals are flourishing, and you're going to find an abundance of honey from bees. That's my best attempt right here without looking into it some more. And the sheep will be able to graze on the previously tended croplands. Bee honey is not seen as a sign of blessing for the land, though it is seen as fortunate to find it. As in the story of Jonathan mentioned above, Yaakov also probably sent bee honey to Joseph. Still amount of honey be hard to obtain. Okay, read the rest of this because he's going on with a lot more stuff that if you read it, you're going to still see how he shows from this book that the honey, for example, there is just letting you understand, have a different understanding of what we think of honey today. And so then you would understand when you're reading the scriptures now that a land flowing with milk and honey refers to the agricultural culture of the land of Israel, as he closes out in the last paragraph on this page. Agricultural blessing then is referred to as a part of the blessing of the agriculture that's booming in the land of Israel when the blessing returns upon Israel. In comparison to that of Egypt, whose dates were much drier in their land and did not easily produce honey. Right? So the dates didn't produce as much honey in the land of Egypt because it was drier there. But he said a land flowing with milk and honey because the blessing in the land that the Most High gave the children of Israel is going to cause agricultural boom. And so there, a lot of milk and honey means that they're going to be blessed in that way. And milk and honey was just used as a way to show the fatness of the land or the blessing in what you're doing. But the blessing is not going to come to them as bees' honey because they weren't eating bees' honey as far as I'm finding out. So they would have understood at the time that that the honey was the honey from the figs, from the nectar, from the dates, from the fruits. That's how the Israelite living at that time would have understood those kinds of prophecies. But today, because the world has changed and we're used to honey from bees, we think of it like that it's all right to eat honey. I'm not seeing it, and I'm not eating honey anymore now that I've seen this stuff. But actually, I stopped eating honey just a couple months ago. So, I'm changing as I go along and so on. I'll get my nutrients and so on from other stuff. This lesson, again, as I said at the start, I'll repeat it, is an attempt to show an alternative understanding of the scriptures in regards to eating honey and milk of animals, as in eating when they ate animals before the Most High holy days. Another thought can now be had to let you see that in a different light. It shows that consuming animals or the byproducts of animals is not a necessary understanding of the scriptures as being a right command from the Most High. Natural nectar or honey can be made from fruits and have been known since ancient times, even in the Middle East. Even in the Middle East. So when it says John the Baptist came eating locusts and wild honey, that seems kind of strange to me. You got to watch the understanding of that. This then keeps the true Torah intact, as it is my belief that Torah was taught the wrong way, but there is a correct way to teach it to undo the damage done to the Torah, or to our understanding of the Torah. These misunderstandings lead one to accept the heavy use of animals in worship and eating of animals or animal parts and so on, to worship the Most High and as a normal part in life and so on, like eating animal and flesh sacrifices and so on, right? And it's funny because things I've been reading lately have been showing me that the Israelites didn't normally just get up and eat animals on a regular basis. They didn't normally. But on high holy days, if it was all that good and healthy and the choice of the Most High for them, why wouldn't they be doing it normally? It goes to show you that they're pulling in these things on high holy days to get children of Israel to do something wrong and tell you, the Lord said to do this on my holy day feasts and so on. So they will do it. So the feasts look corrupt. Some of the feasts look corrupt. So you got to think of this as an attempt to show something different. You must rethink the scriptures, look at it again, and try to find how somewhere we went wrong. Killing all these animals and sacrificing them to the Most High, it wipes out the creatures, first of all. And I didn't get into the whole bee stuff because there's a lot of arguments there. Some people say killing the bees is causing a problem and with the food on the earth. And then somebody else writes an article saying the bees are fine and so on. You're going to find all that stuff all the time. Listen, I'm just trying to teach to show that there can be a different and what I call a better understanding of the Torah that still lets the Torah remain intact, while at the same time showing that these what I call extra things added in were just a precursor to Calvary, which itself is a flesh or human sacrifice, which linked back to the children of Israel doing flesh or human sacrifice when they offered up their humans or their children unto Moloch or Chemosh. And that kind of flesh or human sacrifice was linked in ancient times to flesh of animals or animal sacrifices, and that came from other nations that existed and were doing it before Israel came along. So animal sacrifices were used before Israel became a nation. So all that stuff leads up to Calvary. Calvary then to me is rooted in something that is heathen, coming from ancient pagan sacrifices. At my level of learning and searching, and with the limited amount of books I have and so on, at my level right here, I have done my best so far in this topic to show what I'm thinking, and again to show from another angle that something is wrong with Calvary. Once I learn some more on this topic, I'm sure I will share some more in the future. But Calvary, to me, is fake. It is linked to flesh or animal and human sacrifices from pagan nations that Israel took on and should not have done it. And then the Romans could use that to pull off the Calvary flesh sacrifice. Shalom.